Okay, so Nicole, why are you passionate about eating, healing from eating, intuitive eating, all these different things? What makes you so passionate about this field?
Oh my goodness. I'll keep it to a Reader's Digest version of the story. But my story is that I'm a registered nurse. I've been a registered nurse for 19 years. And so I've always, loved working with people one-on-one, was very passionate always about preventative health and those sorts of things. And I've worked in all different kinds of settings, hospitals, community, and my favorite being mental health. And so my story kind of has two interesting roads that crossed at one point. I started doing a lot with preventative health, which included things like weight loss
Yeah.
and doing a lot of research around weight loss and what's, best for promoting weight loss, working with, parents and families about how to get everybody eating healthy, and stayed in that vein for a long time. Unfortunately, had all of the risk factors and the temperament that led me right into developing an eating disorder. And so I struggled with that for many, many years before I reached out for help and eventually got treatment, but had a restrictive eating disorder. And so I, really have a lot of empathy for what people are going through, having, lived my own experience of it at one point.
Yeah, same. I was kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum, but I certainly I say my biggest struggle was getting into my body. I just was living from the head up. I was like sliced from the neck down, couldn't feel anything. And so kind of, whether you fall into restrictive eating or binge eating after you can't feel your body, either way. And just because I work at an eating disorder center where we see a lot of patients with restrictive eating, anorexia, stuff like that, I know it can be so challenging and so sticky and so deep rooted and all these different things that really make it hard to treat. But now you're on the other side, and I'd love, 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 love to hear about that journey. I know we'll talk about obstacles to intuitive eating and so forth, but maybe that conversation comes out of kind of hearing about your recovery story.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
Reader's Digest, though. Reader's Digest. I don't know. I mean, not to rush through your story, but if you had to tell us about it more, what would you say?
I would say it was years of torment.
Yeah.
Just the absolute worst years of my life. Like you said, so disconnected from not only my body, but from everything, really. I was sort of like floating through my life. I was like physically present, but I was not, emotionally present, mentally, was not well. So eventually I found a amazing psychiatrist who saved my life.
Oh, nice.
Sent me to a therapist who saved my life, sent me to a dietitian who saved my life.
Oh man. We need people to point us in the right direction.
We do. Yeah. So I really wanted to give back to the recovery community because it does take a really long time. And I wanted to talk about that today too, about just how long it takes to recover from these issues. But just knowing that it took a lot of hard work, and I found intuitive eating through my treatment team and decided that with my background as a medical professional, I have something very special to give here. Nurses are not real common in this area of work.
It's true.
Yeah. So, I've got a lot to offer. I've got 3 degrees in my field. I've studied human behavior. I've been a researcher, a practitioner. So I did the certification with Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch. And did that a couple of years ago. And I've been in private practice ever since. And I see adult clients who are struggling with chronic dieting, disordered eating, or all types of eating disorders in an outpatient setting. So
I know we're going to talk about some of the obstacles to intuitive eating. Um, do you help people with intuitive eating, help them get over those obstacles? Or is it kind of like, hey, these obstacles are so big, like I actually don't follow that exact path?
Well, I like to say that I really help them with that piece. And, it is very interesting. And again, like, I think a lot of people don't really know it. Nurses are amazing. Like, we have so many skills to like pull from because we have to know the medical knowledge, we have pharmacology knowledge, we have nutrition knowledge, we have all
Mm-hmm.
these pieces, mental health. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
therapeutic communication, and so I draw on all of those areas. And so if I'm really helping people through their journey. And I think what I've discovered as part of it is like whether or not you have an officially diagnosed eating disorder, it takes a lot of time to heal
Yeah.
these issues and a lot of patience to go through the steps needed to
Mm-hmm.
uncover what is at the root. And
Uh-huh.
dealing with the thoughts and the feelings and the behaviors and everything else.
How long would you say it took you? It's
Belief.
almost like you don't want to share the information because then it's like people don't get started.
Yeah. I'm going to say years.
Yeah.
Years, but some of those years were more heavily oriented in the early recovery piece and, probably less time in the intuitive eating piece once I was nourished enough to be able to do the work.
Yeah. The refeeding and regaining weight is it's that's a struggle.
It is for
It is
sure.
a struggle. But let's say someone is like not super severe, we'll say. I don't know the exact word. Let's say they're disordered, but like they're at a point where they can they can start the intuitive eating journey, we'll say. Um, Perfection, that's one of the obstacles that stops people from intuitive eating. And I mean, geez, I mean, people who all types of people, I mean, myself included, but it's just such an obstacle. It's so like these thoughts. It's so tricky to get out of that black and white thinking.
Mm-hmm. It is. It is. Perfectionism is. I mean,
It's
literally,
the worst.
it's the worst. It is
It,
the worst.
it's like you're being hard on yourself, but you still are hard on yourself. It's like it's hard to shut off that part. I don't know if you really can shut off that um, that part. And I mean, certainly it blocks people from intuitive eating just because you're trying this new way and you're bringing all your old dieting mentalities over to it, and yeah, it's just so tricky to wrap your mind around.
Yeah. It's that old expression. If I had a dime for every time somebody asked me, am I doing this right?
Yeah. I know. Oh my gosh.
Am I doing it right?
I get that too with journaling. Like I'm the journaling guy, and I'm there's so many different ways to journal. Like there's so many, I think it's a lot of. I don't want to hear your thoughts too, but for me, like with the journal, it's sort of like where are we coming from? Like if we're coming from a sincere, genuine place of exploration, curiosity, compassion, if we're really trying to become aware of our thoughts around food, like you can record every time, you can record once a day, you don't even have to record like all that often, but like are we really doing the work that's necessary to get you from point A to point B? That's sort of one way I think about handling perfection. What do you say?
Yeah. Oh, I agree 100%. And it's it's so interesting that, expectations, I would say that's one really big trap in this whole process is
Mhm.
that the expectations sometimes are so high that yeah, I have to do it this exact way, or I'm not doing it right, or I didn't journal enough. I didn't, write enough. I didn't, whatever it is, it's
Yeah,
never
yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
So that's always interesting to process that. And say, well,
Uh-huh.
I heard you say that, it sounds like you didn't feel like you journaled enough. Can you tell me about that? And
Mm-hmm.
what does that mean to you? And, what is going to be enough?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sometimes I mean, coming back to your story too. I mean, how much weight loss is enough, right? I mean, I see that with people with like, how much weight are you gonna lose? Like, I mean, I don't know. It's weird how that thought gets like distorted. I don't know. People people sometimes they don't have a sense of when how much is enough.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always that more is better, more weight loss must be better,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever. More of everything is better or less of everything is better. And there's nothing in between those two extremes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so extreme. Like it's ah, it's so hard. This it's perfection. I sometimes think of it like it's a evil like slave master. Like it's just whipping you and making you work harder and harder and how do you, so I guess we defeat the slave master, we'll say, by I don't know. Trying to relate the analogy to being enough, but I'm
Yeah.
struggling here to put the pieces together.
Right.
Um, so perfection is so like ingrained in us. Where do you stand on perfection these days? I mean, some discipline and pursuit of excellence isn't a bad thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
how do you know where to draw the line between being, let's say, perfectionistic in a good way at work and with your clients versus being perfectionistic in a slave master way with your food? Where are you at nowadays with that?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah. I would say it kind of goes back to where the line is for me is if it's not kind, if it's not self-compassionate,
Mm,
if it's coming from a place of like you're doing it wrong, that kind of chatter,
yeah.
versus like, okay, I'm a human being. I'm progressing towards whatever this is goal that I have,
Mm,
which is great, or these intentions that I've set or whatever. And
hmm.
just knowing that I'm not going to be a perfect clinician. I'm not going to be a perfect wife, a perfect, whatever role in my life, housekeeper, whatever. And like just letting
Mm,
that be okay.
mm, mm,
And I think it's just moving like the needle just a little bit
mm,
sometimes. So if I can do that and say and be kind to myself once, I can do it again.
mm. Oh, I love that. I think we're really on the same page there.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that too. Moving the needle a little bit. Like, okay, little bit of compassion, right? A little bit of compassion, right? I think even people, just a little.
I'll take one kind word.
Yeah, yeah, like yeah, yeah. You have to be so sick if you can't give yourself any compassion. But I mean, there are definitely people out there. But but I think a lot of people can also say a little bit of compassion is possible.
Yes, a
Yeah,
little bit.
yeah. I think we all know that we're you know fallible and
Mhm.
mistake prone, and I don't know,
Yeah.
human nature, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like the learning, and I think that that's the other kind of approach to that is kind of reframing it as there's not a right way or a wrong way to do it. There's just learning, and each time you eat or each time you do whatever it is you're doing, try to be self-compassionate. Whatever it is that you learn something that you take forward with you to the next time, and it doesn't have to be that you did it right or wrong or good or bad. It's just kind of loosening that the language can be so it can put us in a prison of sorts, I think, too.
Yeah. So, like with intuitive eating, do you think the perfection comes in when people are sort of bringing their old diet mentality, so to speak, into intuitive eating? Like, hey, I'm allowing myself to try these different foods, but like I overate even just a tiny bit, or is that kind of where people get caught up in perfection? Where do you see perfection coming in with intuitive eating?
I think it's in several places. And I think that is absolutely the case, is that a lot of people come to this work when they have been on diets for so long. They have really been, driven by external cues for a very, very long time. And it's hard to, go from there to jump to, this interoceptive awareness of your body and it's like, there's a huge discrepancy there.
Yeah.
Between those two, places. And really, like we were just talking about, of moving the needle, to a place of learning and curiosity, and I think that's a major area that people bring in these rules. Like, I have to do intuitive eating this way because it says it in the book or in the workbook.
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. And you also, I think when you speak about these rules, sometimes they're so obstinate. They're like etched in your mind. They're so like, they're just so permanent, seemingly. And you mentioned another obstacle about intuitive eating is like unrealistic expectations of the time and work required to heal. I think that obstacle fits right in with those rules too, expecting that like some of this OCD like type of thinking, type of this like OCD compulsive, like I gotta follow the rule, like that type of like intensity around these rules. I think that can be a while. What are your thoughts around like having unrealistic expectations? There we go.
Yes. Well, I definitely think that, for people with eating disorders, there's a lot of more information now about kind of the neurobiology behind that. And there can be, things in our brain that are happening that, if our expectations don't match the reality, it can be very jarring and very anxiety producing for us. And so you're right. I mean, I think when people come into doing this work, and I probably did this too, especially starting my own business, doing this, of thinking that like people were going to be 3 to 6 months, give them some tools.
Yeah.
No, I mean, once you start digging a little bit, you find something and one more thing underneath the surface. I kind of think of like, and I apologize for the medical, metaphor here, but wounds, I'm thinking about like a wound on your skin or underneath that's very, very deep. And like, sometimes it gets a scab on it, but it hasn't healed. It just has a little scab on the top. And if you start picking at it, it's going to bleed again because it hasn't healed from the inside out. So I think that the expectation of like, I'm just going to eat this formerly forbidden food one time and I'm going to be cool is not even anywhere near the reality of what it takes to practice and really get comfortable and really have permission. For instance, that would be an example of that.
I see. Like people, I could definitely see that. Yeah, wanting to rip the Band-Aid off and get that wound, like, oh, let me just eat this real quick and not go through any fear, not go through any anxiety, like not have to, the only way out is through, as they say. It's sucks.
It sucks. It sucks. I mean, I've even spent, entire sessions with clients just talking about one food, like cake. And I mean, you could talk about cake for many sessions, probably, starting with the roots of, well, where does this come from? Tell me about, the childhood memories and like all of these things, because cake is not just cake.
It's not. Yeah. It's it's disappointment. It's it's a bunch of things.
It is a bunch of things. Yeah. I think that's the hard part is, there's some kind of, I think there's a lot of grief in this process. We can maybe talk about that later too. But I think part of the grief is that I'm going to be able to just Band-Aid this problem, or I'm going to be able, I want a quick fix to this because I'm in a lot of pain.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel you there. I'm just thinking back to my own therapy journey. I mean, I'm still in therapy. Like, I don't know if I'll ever stop. Like, I mean, I just see it at this point as like a useful addition to my life. I don't know. It's always helpful to have support. But anyways, I remember thinking back early, like, okay, like let me get this pain. I know something's off. I don't know what exactly. Like, let me just kind of, you know, fix this, and then it just one step at a time. And I kept on. I was seeing some progress, and I think that is very important to see some progress. I mean, for anyone listening, if you're thinking that this is a horribly long, painful, scary process, I mean, on one hand, yes, but on the other hand, I mean, you're seeing the only reason you're able to go through this horribly long, scary process is because you're getting stronger, your life is improving. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're not, yeah, I mean, you're seeing real progress as well. So, yeah. I think that those thoughts too, I don't know if the inner critic, I mean, it goes away, or it definitely changes, that the ED voice, the inner critic, whatever you want to call it. I think that really takes a long, long time too. I mean, maybe these are all intertwined, the fear foods and the rules, the voice.
Yeah, I think so. I think the voice takes on a lot of different, things.
Yeah.
So, but I think you're right. And I think maybe again, that goes back to expectations, is that like, you're going to do this work and all of a sudden you're going to never have these thoughts, or have the, be on the body love side of, the spectrum of body hate to body love. And that's not, again, probably not realistic. I think the realistic is that you hear the thought. The critic says, "Ooh, you ate too much there, didn't you?" And the person who's in the healed or healing state is saying, "Okay, I hear that. Thanks for the feedback. Bye."
Yeah.
And that's, it's like, okay, it's there. I notice it, but it's not in control of my behavior anymore.
Yeah. I'm just reminded of a conversation the other day where someone was like, they on one hand they had this rebel voice, and on the other hand they had this like inner kid voice, and the kid was like, I want. Or wait, maybe the kid was like the rebel. One voice was like, I want. The other voice was like, no. And there was like this battle. And they were just, this is one of the first times that they were just like kind of in the middle of it, but like not really reactive to either side. And they realized, kind of by sitting with these conflicting voices, that like, okay, I think they wanted like, I think they got like meat or something like this. They were like, okay, I can have something, and so they basically found the solution. They found that they could eat something that would satisfy them. But but they had to duke it out. They had to sit in this conflict. And I don't think people are expecting that. I mean, I don't think people are, that's not what people are expecting. Maybe like they're expecting, I'll just have clarity and peace with food, right? We'll talk about peace with food, and it's not this inner battle, that this wrestling match of, I mean, this isn't just him in a Zen state. Oh, my inner critic is over here and my child is over here, and here I am in the middle, and I'm Om and Zen. And I mean, this is like a wrestling match. It's like, how can I stay present and not, how can I stay in my body? Yeah. Go for it.
I love that. That is such a great, that's actually such a great visual, because I think everybody who does this work can relate to that, of having this battle between, like you said, the rebel, and it's almost like the parent and the rebellious teenager. And they're like,
Yeah.
Going at it. It's like, oh, you retain the autonomy to decide, what, when, and how much you want to eat. It takes a while to get back there, but
yeah, it does. Another obstacle you wrote about was you're like, if someone is beginning this journey, they're trying to make peace with foods, but like but maybe their body isn't fully nourished yet, or there's some obstacles to like making peace with food. Could you describe more?
Sure.
Okay.
I think that I've started calling like the first 2 chapters of the book in the workbook, The Reckoning. So I think that there's a lot of pain in those 2 chapters.
Yeah.
And really the first piece of acceptance is that like I was, dieting, I was following all these rules. I was in this mentality that was serving me and protecting me in some way. And now you're telling me that all of those things were, maybe harmful, or maybe they're not serving me. And I'm having to, kind of come to terms with the fact that there's a lot of harm that was caused. There are a lot of things maybe I missed out on. All these years of worrying about my body and not being, all of those things is, I call that the reckoning. And a lot of times self-care too is a big piece of, honoring hunger being, an important part of that is like, yeah, you really do have to eat multiple times a day.
Yeah.
You gotta. It's foundational to your being able to handle different foods. Because if you're not nourished, you will eat past fullness. You will feel out of control at the beginning, because you're still, the drive is there. The instinct is there to get food back into your body.
I got to ask about your own reckoning, Nicole.
It's so painful.
Like, what did you miss out on?
Oh my gosh. Well, you're probably, I see you have the workbook.
Yeah.
I know that nobody can see us right now, but got the workbook
It'll go on YouTube though.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. The workbook behind you, and there's a chart in there about all the different areas that, your eating disorder has affected your life negatively. So, I mean, just from the physical piece, major fatigue, major mood changes, osteopenia, lost my period for years. So that was just kind of on the physical side, low blood pressure, so I had a lot of those.
Hair sometimes falls
off. Nails, skin. Really head to toe. I was cold all the time, constantly. Fainted, a few, things like that. So there's that. From the social perspective, I missed out on years of going out to dinner, going to parties, going to weddings. Maybe it was one wedding, but but it was years of that, of me choosing, maybe not me choosing, but it seemed that way at the time, that staying, inside. The years of preoccupation.
Yeah, that's the mental side of it.
Constant. So I think that kind of covers the main pieces, kind of the social, the mental, just, and I mentioned before, not being present in my life at all. Like I would be physically present, but I was like,
you're thinking about
where I was,
whatever, counting and stuff.
Yep.
I remember this interesting story where someone was so in the habit of counting. This was at the CLO Eating Disorder Treatment Center at where I work, and I think they were making an active effort to like not count calories or something like that. So they started counting like the number of noodles on their plate or something like that. It was like they were counting, like they were like, why am I counting? I can't stop counting. I can't stop counting. They're really like, I mean, talk about grieving, right? I feel really, I feel for this person. You know, they're realizing the insanity of it, but also like the compulsion behind it. Like, I'm not even counting calories. I'm counting, like, I have to count. And like their life was sort of ruled by counting.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, uh, yeah, I mean, I mean, what do you call that? I mean, right? Like, I guess the step is just a little bit of compassion, right? In that moment, like, I mean, when things are so trapped like that, it's hard to even imagine like a solution being there. Or,
Yeah.
but I guess a little bit of compassion is one step at a time.
Exactly. And yeah, and maybe the compassion is towards that, there's anxiety there and the counting is
Yeah, yeah.
helping,
Uh huh. Uh
to
huh.
manage that.
Uh huh.
Maybe that's your
Uh,
first step.
yeah.
Wow, there's a reason I'm doing this.
Yeah, 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 yeah. This helped me feel safe. It helps me feel safe, and
Mm-hmm.
that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
lot of anxiety. Yeah, that mind and body, I guess. Yeah. Hmm. I think so. You mentioned grieving earlier too. I don't know if that's an obstacle. I mean, sure, it's an obstacle, but necessary as well.
Yeah.
Do you ever do anything where you like, I don't know, wrote a letter to your ED voice or something, burned it or something, or
Right.
yeah, I don't know.
I don't know if I don't think I burned it.
I don't
I
know,
think
or whatever. Like, some
I need to
smash a
find it and
scale
burn
or
it.
something.
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm more of a, peaceful, like I'm not going to be the one out there with a little hammer. I did throw my scale away.
Yeah,
That felt really good.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. But I
Um,
think I
yeah.
wrote letters to my body. I wrote letters to, my eating disorder voice and, really had to, yeah, like you said, come to terms with that this was serving me and protecting me. And I had to find a different, less self-destructive way of doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I There was one story that I had too where someone was leaving. This is the first and like only time we did this, but we did a scale smashing thing, and there we don't. There was a guy there, and he was like, "Yeah, I've gotten a lot better. I'm going to smash the scale." And so when he was leaving, we all gathered around, and like we were expecting, he rose it over his head and he threw it down, and we were expecting it to just shatter into a million pieces. This thing is indestructible. I mean, like, it was just like the most like anticlimactic thing, and then like it was like, oh, okay, well, anyways, that was his attempted grieving process. But anyways,
That's funny. That's actually, I don't know if that's like a metaphor for how difficult it is for
yeah, that's funny. You're
carrying
right.
the
Yeah,
diamond.
yeah, yeah. Like, yeah, you think you're just gonna like. I mean, this comes back to the unrealistic expectations and how long and stuff, but you think you're just gonna like make this mighty effort and smash it, and then it's like it's still in the ring with you. It's still present, and yeah. Um, Attempting to put body image work on the back burner. Yeah, you're talking sort of like where people are really concerned about how they look and yeah. I mean that I feel like that's necessary to eat more. I mean, you mentioned honoring your hunger as being so important, and it is. It's hard to honor your hunger if your shape of your body is if that's all you can think about.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that they're just so closely intertwined that it's really hard. Well, at least it is for me. It's very
Sure.
hard for
Oh
me
yeah.
to do this work with people without addressing that the entire way through the process
Mm, mm,
because it comes up all the time.
mm,
It
mm.
really, really does. Like you said, if you're, trying to get to the place where you're honoring your hunger, but you have the eating disorder voice is like, no, you're already too big. What's going to happen if you continue to eat? I mean, those are deep issues around your body image and the relationship you have with your body. We haven't even talked yet about if somebody has trauma in their history. I mean, this is what I mean. It's like this process can take a while to even, feel safe enough to take care of your body, let alone feed it routinely. So, just doing that really deep work of, I define body image as that personal relationship we have with our body. And so not just the aesthetic piece, but also the functionality and the thoughts, the feelings, what it means to us. So, it's like constantly, I feel like most of the work I do is like one of those movies where it keeps jumping forwards and backwards, and then it'll come into the present, and then you're back like, and they're 12, and then, now we're worried about the future,
That's such a good, I'm trying to think of a movie. I guess Pulp Fiction comes to mind, but I mean, I don't know, maybe not the best movie, or for whatever, but no, I hear you. So for body image thoughts, this is something that I'd like to learn more about too. As my own, as a therapist, counselor, coach myself. I mean, I love the journal. Is that how you sort of, how do you get people to start seeing their relationship to their body? Like you mentioned that ED voice, like, hey, like if you eat this, you're, I don't know, you're going to gain weight, or you've already eaten too much. Like that little voice. I think that voice, I mean, is very hard to detect. It's sometimes just on autopilot and et cetera. How do you kind of slow people down and have them become more aware of that?
Yeah. And I really do. This is where I think the journaling piece is so important. Is kind of just identifying, well, what are these kind of pervasive thoughts? Maybe the ones that you keep hearing over and over again that are, coming up around your body. And what are all the ways you've tried to manage those thoughts? And people have a lot of different ways of doing that. So maybe they tried to think their way out of it. Maybe they tried to distract themselves with something else, maybe they did some self-destructive type behavior, so whatever it is of trying to avoid or escape these really painful thoughts, because that's what we do, right?
I mean, that's what
ourselves.
I think that's one reason people don't eat, right? It's one way to get away from that is just to clamp down.
Yeah. And I think that this is also where grief comes up again, because it's really hard to see that and say, well, I've done all of these things and it hasn't gotten rid of these negative thoughts about my body.
Yeah. All the diets, all that work, and all that time.
Yeah.
Grief. Yeah, years. I mean.
Yeah.
I like, so yeah, how do you manage those negative thoughts? That's like, I like that. I like how these thoughts can go, like, okay, I'm having this thought about my body. Like, how have I tried to manage, like kind of going deeper, like now that's how have I reacted to that thought? Like, has it worked?
Yes. Yeah. And then kind of coming at it, I'm giving you this is a very broad overview. This takes some time, but, really, be able to then separate yourself from it and say, oh, well, I'm having a thought to that, or I'm evaluating myself in this way, and putting that separation there, and that really comes a lot from, mindfulness of like seeing these thoughts, they're there. It doesn't mean that they're true. It doesn't mean that, they may not be accurate at all. It's just the thought that you're having.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, the journal is such a good tool for that, to get it all on paper too, or to see it. I think it's so good to write stuff out, especially thoughts, because that is like one way of getting separation and seeing the thought, so to speak, is, if you write it out on paper, it's literally, you can see it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love doing that too. And there's so many different, I know
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
work is in CBT, and there's so
Yeah.
many
Yeah. Yeah. I
amazing,
definitely come from that. Yeah.
ways to address that with journaling. But I really just think, just getting it out on paper just to start is probably a good, first step of what's kind of going on up here that we want to see. What does it look like when you've actually written the words down?
I love it. I think we covered a lot today. That was the last of the obstacles that I was discussing. We emailed back and forth if you're listening, and yeah. Where can people find you online?
Well, I'm on Instagram. That's really the only social media place I hang out, but I'm at Intuitive Eating Nurse. And I also have a website. My company is Nurture Consulting LLC. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, and it's www.nurtureconsultingllc.com. One word, one very long word.
Nurture Consulting LLC and Intuitive Eating Nurse. I
You
like
got
that.
it.
You're right. No, you're right though. I haven't. I think you're the first nurse I've met. I mean, not in my life, but just like in the intuitive eating field. Trying to think, but no, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Not a lot of us.
I also want to thank you for your own recovery journey. I'm inspired. Sometimes I get not hopeless. What's another less strong version of hopeless? Just like, are people with anorexia ever going to get better? Like, I sort of it takes so long. It's sometimes like I'm like, I get exasperated with it. I mean, so thank you for being a model for that, and kind of just, it always helps me too, hearing and seeing recovery stories. So thank you. I mean, thanks for doing the work. Thanks for, sharing that it is difficult and long, and but also totally worth it. And there's hope, there's definitely practical solutions, and like some of these obstacles, I think they're pretty common. And just to know that there's ways to heal, even if you're um, in the pit, I guess. Yeah.
And there are a lot of pits.
Yeah, there are a lot of pits.
The pit of torment.
The pit of torment. I know, right? The pit of torment. Yeah.
Well, thanks for giving me the space to talk and share my own story, and what I've kind of discovered doing this work with others. So I appreciate the time.
I mean, if anyone is going through restrictive eating, please reach out to Nicole, because I really can tell that your stuff, and especially with your background and all these different fields, I really strongly recommend anyone who's resonating to go ahead and send her a message on Instagram. But anyways, final question: what is your definition of enlightenment?
Ooh.
Yeah, how do you define it?
I almost want to say like an inner light or a peace from within.
I'm down. That sounds good to me.
Such a great question.
Thanks for coming on, Nicole.
Thanks for having me.